Hello, Python starters. So we're going to talk about regular expressions. Regular expressions make it a lot easier to parse input that we need to work with in Python. And we're going to do this today on the Raspberry Pi. So continuing an example that we had begun looking at, we have an HTML file over here on the right. And inside this HTML file, it comes from Twine, we have some story data. And this is the interesting part of the file. However, there's a lot of other text in this file, and so we really want to just focus on this text. And we want to be able to extract the different elements of the story as well as the different elements of each passage. So let's go back to our file that we had, and we're going to make some changes here and start using regular expressions. Okay, so first of all, we're going to import a module. And that module is the RE for regular expressions. And we'll talk some more about importing modules, but this is a way to reference some of the built-in functionality that comes in Python. Next, we're going to take a look at the contents of that file in a little different way than we did in the past. So we'll read in the file contents, and then what we'll do is we will store some of the story data as a result of a regular expression search that we're going to do. So we'll do re.search, and then we're going to pass in a string. This is the pattern that we're going to use to search for the kind of information we're looking for. Now remember, we can put a backslash to wrap to the next line. So I'll just hit enter and go to a new line, and this will just make it a little bit cleaner and easier to read the pattern we're looking for. So as we look over here on the right, we can see there's this like a less than sign, or angled bracket symbol there. So we'll use that as the first character, and then TW for Twine story data. So we'll try to match that. Next, we're going to use a period or dot, which just represents any character. And then we'll use a star, which means repeat looking for any character, as many characters as you can find. And then we're going to limit that with a question mark so that it's a non-greedy search. So rather than searching for every possible character, we're just going to look up until we can find the match that we're looking for. So the match that we want to get is, let's go around now to another line, is we're looking for this name property. So we'll type in name equals double quote, so this opening double quote, and then we're going to try to capture what is in these double quotes. So here it says good morning over on the right. We're going to try to capture that. So the way we capture that is by creating this group, and we will give it a name in this case. So if we put question mark P and then use brackets, we can use whatever we put in the brackets as a name to refer to it later. So we'll call it story name. And the way we describe this thing is it's any character repeated as many times as needed, but non-greedy up to the closing quote. So we'll look for name equals open quote, and then we'll look for any character up until we find the first closing double quote. Okay, so that captures that piece, and then we want to match any other text that we find up until the end of this story data. And then the second parameter is the string we're going to search for. So we're going to search through. So we're going to search through the file text, and then we'll put a closing parenthesis to finish off that function. Okay, next we want to print the results. So we're going to print story name, and then I'm going to concatenate or add to the string the story data group named story underscore name. And then we'll just add to this, we'll concatenate on the end a single quote, just kind of wrap it up. Okay, so now let's save this file. To a different location. We'll call it good morning regular expressions. Okay, and now we're going to run this. Okay, so there we have the story name is good morning. Oh, and you see a single quote there, so I should include another single quote here just so that matches, and let's rerun that. Okay, story name is good morning. Excellent. Okay, now we want to look deeper within this for these things called TW-passage data. So there's a passage ID 1, and then you can see there's a passage ID number 2 for another passage data. And each of these has a name, and then after this closing bracket between that and the end of this passage data element, you'll see the text of the passage. And so we want to capture both the name and the text of the passage. Okay, so let's work on that. All right, next we are going to use a new construct. It's basically a for loop. So for each passage in the regular expression find all, so we're going to do a find all of a particular pattern, and we're going to use a backslash so I can just go to the next line to keep this looking nice. We're going to look for name, or sorry, we're going to look for first we want to search for the passage data, so we'll look for this opening bracket here that it basically indicates the beginning of this element. So we'll search for that, and then we'll look for any character repeated many times, but limited, so non-greedy, until we find name equals quote. So over here we find name equals double quote, and then within that we're going to create a grouping to capture that name, and end quote. And the way we describe what's in there is, again, any character many times but non-greedy. So you'll see that repeated a lot, the dot star question mark for non-greedy any characters. And then we're going to do dot star question mark, and we're going to look for the ending bracket that indicates we've gotten to the end of that element definition and we're now ready for the passage. Okay, so then we'll capture that passage, and the passage again is a group we're going to capture, and the way we describe that similarly is non-greedy any characters. And then finally we're going to look for the closing brackets for this particular element. So after you see this text, then it ends with a / TW passage data. So we'll put that in here as the final thing to look for. And then that ends our expression that we're searching for, and we're going to search for that in the same file text string. There we go. Now, for each one of these passages that we find, we're going to put a colon. We're going to do an action, and that action we're going to do is we're going to print that passage, and it's going to be, because there's two groupings we're looking for here, it's going to actually return a tuple. Now, a tuple is basically an unchangeable list, and we'll talk about those in more detail. So it's basically a list, and we're going to say index 0, so the first one. And then let's just put a delimiter here so that we can make it easier to read. Some space in there, and then we'll look for the second one. So one is the passage name, and we'll look for the passage text. Then we'll just close it off with a single quote string again. Okay, so we'll save that. And now for each passage that we find between these passage data element markers, we're going to grab two different groups. One is the name group, and then one is the actual passage. And so then we'll print those out. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this. Let's run it, see what happens. Okay, so maximize this. So we have the story name, good morning, and then we have a passage, good morning, and then here's that passage in single quotes. And there's a choice here to go for a walk or watch the sunrise. So here's go for a walk, there's that passage, and watch the sunrise. So now with the regular expression, we've been able to parse the output from Twine and break that into information that we can now programmatically utilize to create some other interesting output. So that is the next phase in using text data as input for our Python applications. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll be back again soon. Thank you so much, and if you have any questions, feel free to just drop a note in the comments for this video. Thank you so much. Talk soon.